Hey guys, this video is brought to you by Dev Mountain Coding Bootcamp. If you guys are trying to get your foot in the door in the software development industry, there's no better place to look. The link is in the description tab below. They're focused on all the latest web development technologies that you need in order to get your foot in the door as a junior developer. They're working with different employers to figure out the skills that you need to know. Go to View and then go to your integrated terminal. And you could put this down here at the, you could paste it at the bottom if you wanted to. Just click this button and it'll put it down on the bottom. You could also split it. So if you wanted to have multiple consoles, that's how you do it. You could have multiple consoles inside the same session. So here you could see this is doing something and this is doing something else, right? So you have two different terminals that way, and they're side by side. And you could even start expanding on them multiple times over and over and over again. If you want to delete that, you can go ahead and delete that session. It's going to delete the terminals one by one that are selected. And that's how you have them side by side. Now, if you just wanted to have multiples, you could also do the same thing. So like just go to the terminal. And here I can have different actual sessions, so I don't have to have them stacked. Like, or I could stack them on top of each other instead of having different, having the window split. So that might be a little bit easier for you. You could just add as many as you want. Like, it's really unlimited how many you want to add. There's also different types. You can add the actual PowerShell terminals as well if you're into that sort of thing. And again, if you're like a system admin, it can get pretty crazy, because if you're on this particular terminal and you start splitting it out, it's going to add a bunch to number 10, so you can switch to 9 and 8. So you could have like a million different consoles open, probably just to the point where you have utter confusion. All right, so the next thing I want to show you guys is the command palette. The command palette, if you press Control-Shift-P, allows you to see all the built-in shortcuts that you currently have created or built in for you. So Cargo, this is because I have Rust installed. So all the different plugins that have shortcuts will be inside of your command palette. So everything you've installed will be here. If we go back to our example and we look at like the terminal, you can see all these built-in shortcuts for the terminals, and not all of them have shortcuts, so you have to actually select it from the command palette. But if you do want to go ahead and use the shortcut, you can see this split terminal. Now, it can be confusing because the Control / is actually going to split not just the, so I guess terminal is kind of a broad definition, because it can be the actual console, or like the PowerShell console that you have open, or it could just be the actual files that you have open. So let me show you an example. So Control, not that. So I'm going to press Control /, and that's going to start splitting whatever I'm on. So if I'm on the integrated terminal, it's also going to split here. So if I do Control /, I can split that as well. And let's go ahead and delete all that. That's crazy. All right, so the next thing I want to show you is the quick find. So a lot of times when you're working on the same set of files. I think we all know that. Like you're extending some piece of functionality, it's the same 10, 15 files or whatever. So if you want to do a quick search on all the files you've had open, and even if you've already closed them, you can do Control-P. So this is the quick find command. And if you do the question mark, it'll actually give you a bunch of suggestions here, just helpful, like it helps suggestions. But you can see here that everything that I've recently opened since I've had this session with Visual Studio Code is here for me, so I can quickly navigate to all these different files that I've had open recently, with the most recently opened on top. So that's a very beneficial feature when you're like, oh crap, I need to bounce around. So changing your theme in Visual Studio Code is as quick as saying Control-K, Control-T, and this is going to be all the different themes that you have installed. So you can actually install a bunch more if you want, but I have a few here. So I'll just use like, we'll use Monokai, the dark, and just, that quickly. So maybe you're feeling the light, the light theme, you can go to that and blind yourself if you want. Some people really like that actually. But we're going to go with just the typical dark Visual Studio, because that's my favorite theme, to be honest. So in order to change those settings, you just go to File, Preferences, and then Settings. This is where all your custom user settings are down here. And then we can just go ahead and add a command here. or add just a path. If you do workbench color customizations, you can go ahead and have like I put the foreground and background as really dark. Like I said, there's a lot of contrast. So I think it just depends on what your preference is. But here is what it was before. And if I go ahead and save it, you now get this more, darker color thing. For whatever reason, I kind of like this a little bit better. Some people probably don't. And it's a little bit bright. But anyway, if you guys wanted to mess around and change that, even if you want to create your own themes, that's how you're going to go in and you're going to change the actual terminal. So a lot of people are very big on hotkeys. If you want to be like an old school neckbeard Vim hacker with a bunch of hotkeys that make you look like you're doing magic, then this is for you. You could press Control K, Control S. You have to make sure the application is selected. Control K, Control S, and this will actually bring up every one of your hotkeys that you have and keyboard shortcuts. So go ahead and you could spend all day probably looking at all these, but some of these are being set by different plugins and things like that. But all this stuff it has the ability to be customized. So the next feature I want to show you is the Zen Mode. A lot of times you'll have the Explorer open, you'll have this navigation pane on the right, maybe you'll have TFS or something else, who knows. You have all this stuff open, but you want to go into Zen Mode so that you can actually just see what it is that you're currently focused on. And to do that, you're going to press Control K, and then just after you press Control K, release it and press Z. And this is going to go into Zen Mode. It's going to be really big. You're going to have all this room. You can still zoom in and out from Zen Mode. So if you want to press Control Plus, my screen's very laggy right now for some reason, but you can zoom in and zoom out in Zen Mode. And then if you want to escape Zen Mode, then you just press the escape button. And again, my system is being very, very laggy right now. So the next tip is installing extensions. There's a million extensions for this, and you can see here that there's a C# extension which is recommended. You typically want to go with the most downloaded version, especially when you're dealing with something like Python or C#, something very broad like that, because typically the crowd doesn't lie there, but almost 8 million downloads. And you could also see the Visual Studio is warning me, and the reason why is because I have a C# file open. It can detect that, and it's like, well, you don't really have the extension installed, so without that, you're not going to be able to debug or anything like that. So clearly, you could just click on install the extension, or you could install it from the actual extensions pane. Every time you install the extension, because it's a browser-based application, you need to go ahead and restart it. And you can see now that it's actually downloading the things that it needs, like the .NET Core debugger. So like I said, I can put breakpoints on this thing and fire the code now. So now because I have that extension installed, I now have the option of placing breakpoints where I didn't have that option before. So if I run this .NET Core command from the command line, I should hit this breakpoint. The Navigate to is used quite a bit in Visual Studio, the integrated development environment, and they brought it over to Visual Studio Code. So if you highlight over any sort of function or a piece of code that has an external file to it and press F12, you're going to be able to go to the definition on where that is. So you can see when I press F12, you can see that it's going to this, it's a virtual. This is actually some of the core code from the project itself. In the same way that I did that with F12 to navigate directly to it, I could actually right click and say peak definition, and this is where you could actually again see that it's part of the core code. So go to and peek can be pretty helpful. So if I go down here to the bottom, and let's just say that there's some sort of private void method, we'll just say test, and it just says it's a console write fu or whatever. All right, so it writes foo, and let's go to the top here, and let's just say we're going to reference that. So we're going to call test, right? And then, but you're like, okay, what is test? And you're like, okay, I see it's part of this. It's this void method on the song controller. But I could right click and actually say peak definition, and it's going to tell me, it's going to show me what that is. So this could be in a separate file. This example, it's in the same file, but whether it's a class of like some other, whether it's a class or an interface or whatever it could be, you're going to be able to peek the definition the same way. If you press F12, not only is it going to it's not going to peak, but it's actually going to go to, and then you can see it jumps right to, and that could be in a separate file, things like that. So very, very helpful feature, probably one of the most widely used. So the next really beneficial feature is the rename all. This is something that in Visual Studio and an integrated development environment we use quite a bit, and ReSharper also makes it very helpful, just a click of a button. But with Visual Studio Code, we still have the option of renaming all. So let's give an example. So if I had a parameter here, we'll just say it's a string value of test. And to be quick, I'm going to paste this in. And I know this is a sloppy example, but say you reference test in a bunch of different places. Visual Studio is going to be smart enough when you click on test that it's going to pull up and highlight every reference of test that you have that's available there. So you can see all in this lexical scope here that test is referenced a million times. So if I had to rename test to something else, your boss tells you test is a shit name because it is, then you're going to have to go through here and rename each one of these over and over and over again. Or you could just simply right click and say, you know what, change all occurrences. And as I start typing, I'm going to say, you know what, my boss is right. And my camel case is off. Now he's going to complain about that. But whatever. Like, that's how you change it all. You click off of it, everything's changed. Make sure you guys are utilizing that helpful feature. So the next tip is actually searching Visual Studio the right way. You could search a file by pressing Control F, and it's going to pull up this search option, and we could just search for anything. If I search for test, you can see that it's there. And there's only one occurrence there, so you can do that. That's one option of being able to search. Now, if you wanted to search across your entire application, you're going to press Control Shift F, and this is going to pull up this search command. And that way, when you type in console, you're going to actually search your entire application, and it's going to find it's going to search every file that's available in the workspace here. So that is a very helpful feature. I know a lot of programmers are constantly like, okay, where is this being referenced? So if you're not using the peak definitions, things like that, sometimes it's not exactly that easy. Sometimes like you have a bug report and you get an email, some error message or something, and all you have is the error message. You're like, well, what's firing that? So the first thing you do is you search the error message. Okay, is it a constant? Okay, it's a constant, setting that error message, and then you're searching for all the references to the constant variable. So how do you do that? Well, you right click, and you could actually say find all references to this. So this is going to find that. But if there's references to things like this, we'll say find all references. There's quite a bit more references in here. You can see there's quite a bit of references in the song controller, the home controller, the music controller. So finding by reference, finding by in search, in file searches, as well as the entire across the application search is something that you're going to be doing quite a bit. So that's really the best helpful features I can think of with Visual Studio Code. But if you guys have any suggestions, feel free to leave a message or a link or something to the documentation, because I would love to see it. I'm always trying to become more efficient. I'm sure you guys are too. So thanks for watching. Have a good day and take care. Bye.